All right, I think we're good.
Excellent. Well, welcome again, everybody, to our Resonance Academy Faculty Q&A for September 2021. And we got people coming in on Zoom right now, zooming in through the field, as we like to do it this way. And then looks like we're on YouTube today, Jamie, and Facebook too, or just YouTube?
It's just YouTube today.
Okay.
On the Resonance Science Foundation YouTube channel.
Great. All right. Well, whoever is over there on the RSF YouTube channel, we are welcoming you as well. If you are here on Zoom, you are some of our members in the Resonance Academy, and we really appreciate you joining us in these monthly Q&As. And we do this every third Wednesday of the month with the faculty and every first Wednesday of the month with Nassim. And it's a chance for you guys to give us some good questions and have some good discussions around unified science and all the related topics for that. And so we have a good roster of our faculty today. Adam Apollo is here today with us, and Ines Urdaneta just joined us, beamed in, and Jamie Janover, and I'm Marshall Lefferts, and we're all some of the faculty. There's a few others, as you probably know. And this is a chance for you guys to post some questions for us. And as is typical of these sessions, Jeff Colbrook has always posted the first one pretty much every time we have one of these sessions. So, hey, Jeff, we see your question there. And if you're new to this format, you can click on the Q&A button down at the bottom of the interface in Zoom and put your questions there. And just put like one or two. We can usually not ever get to all the questions. So it's nice if we don't have too many from one person, and we get to see what else is in the mix. And as well, many of you are saying hello on the chat, and we appreciate that, letting us know where you are coming in from and all over the world, as is typically the case. And it's just always wonderful to see the great breadth of locations that our Resonance community, Academy community, is coming in from all around this beautiful planet of ours. Could be beyond too. Maybe some of you are not indicating exactly the full details of where you're located. I know Adam is usually in orbit somewhere, not necessarily around this planet, but he keeps that usually pretty close to the whatever that metaphor is. Close to the chest, close to the mothership. Exactly.
Yeah, you bet. Yeah.
Anyway, and just always like to point out to everybody in the Zoom chat, you have the option to either to who you're posting to, and I can still see that some of you are posting to only the host and the panelists rather than to everyone. So in your chat, just pull down that option to post to everyone. So as you're chatting, everyone else can see your chat. So we always like to do a little quick round of check-ins with the faculty to begin our session. So let's do that real quick. Adam, how about you? You want to do a quick check-in and kick us off?
Yeah, sure. Always a pleasure to be with you guys again. Love these faculty Q&A sessions. As many of you know who know me, unified physics has been one of my deepest passions since I was literally 17. And it's always exciting for me to answer the questions that come in and just have the chance to really, cut my teeth on different aspects of the unified physics world, from the philosophies to the actual physical mechanics. And I think it's just so awesome to understand our relationship to the world and to reality around us, and the ways that consciousness interplays with the geometries of the natural world. So I'm just really thankful to be here with all of you guys again, and excited to get to some of the questions in the Q&A. So thanks guys for having me, and I'm feeling great and I'm in.
Excellent to have you here. Adam's only here for the first hour. So we'll make good use of that time with him. How about you, Ines? Are you here for just the first hour? You usually are only here for the first hour. What's your schedule
maybe
today?
1 hour and a half. Yeah.
Okay, all right.
So yeah, no problem.
Good.
Yeah, I have been working as you probably know in Module 8. So Module 8 is a huge amount of work of the Unified Science course. So that's been basically my main focus at this moment, because we want to launch it as soon as possible, which will take a little bit of time. I'm afraid it's too much of a work. Yeah. So, and we're also working on I'm about to publish an article. I've been working a paper I've been working on, which is called the Electron Review Puzzle. It's about the electron, and it's kind of it's a review about the different aspects of but especially on the aspect of the cedar bewegung. I think I have mentioned that before. It's this kind of trembling along the way electron motion, which is really related to what Nassim and Olivier and they're about to publish. Is basically very linked. So I'm very enthusiastic about this coincidence. Then it gathers like many aspects of the electron that have been like neglected. So let's say that this is a phenomena from the electron that if they had paid really attention to, this would have been solved 100 years ago. Basically, that's what it means. Yeah, the Wigan, yeah. Because when they found this, when they were analyzing the solutions to Dirac's solution to the electron, and Schrodinger and some others, but mainly Schrodinger, found that there was this oscillatory motion of the electron that was happening at the speed of light. And so they said, no, this is not possible. This is happening at the speed of light. So it was interpreted as this. So the interpretation, it's always given the same thing. It's like this popping in and out of existence of this particle-antiparticle production. So that's the way you get out of these motions at speed of light. So this is the way you always neglect the speed of light motion. You say, oh, these are happening at very high speeds, and these are particles and antiparticles emerging at the speed of light. So that's not a problem. And so you're really violating a conservation law, but it's not a big deal because that's happening at
it's cheating. It's cheating.
Yeah, that's cheating. Yeah, exactly.
Push it aside. Don't look at it.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's virtual.
It's virtual. Yeah, this virtual particles are
popping out of existence. Define out of existence in physics terms. How does that work?
Right.
Yeah.
That's a good question.
Yeah. So I have been researching about this motion, and so I found out that there are many physicists in the community that were completely in disagreement with the interpretation of the electrons popping in and out of existence and all of that. And so they said, this is a real motion. This is a real oscillation that in fact explains the spin of the electron. And all these works were completely overlooked or simplified or just simply not taken into account. And so I'm finding myself with a huge amount of research, which was being like hidden, like not hidden because it was hidden in plain sight. There are articles about it, but no one paid attention to it. It's just not taken into account. And I was like, wow. So that's I focused on all these works, and I even developed some of my own. And so I said, this is amazing. So that article, that paper is about 70 pages long. It's a review, that's why it's so long. And I'm about to publish it very soon. This couple of weeks, maybe this next week, I'm going to send it. And so that's another thing that I've been working on. And also in the Shintergy experiments, I have been working with people here in Mexico City. I don't know if I think I've told that before. Cedar Bewegung, it's how it's written, as John Susino just put in the chat. That's exactly the word, Cedar Bewegung, yeah. So yeah, that's it. And that's fascinating. And so these are mind light experiments, I would say. So we have been doing these experiments here in Mexico City. Like it's a continuation of experiments that had been done priorly before, like 20, 30 years ago by a neurophysiologist called Jacobo Greenberg. He's a Mexican researcher. He disappeared in 94. So that's about what we know about him. But we do know that CIA was interested in his research, and one of the people in my work was collaborating with him at the time before he disappeared. So we have this research going on as well. Yeah, it's amazing. We already have very interesting results, but we have to we see a very strong effect, but we have to, keep it, to work a lot and verify that these results are effectively what we're seeing and not any other phenomena and all of that. But I'm really happy to know that many people are already researching on these aspects, and they're finding very interesting results, and they're even publishing that. So even from 2014, 2012, I have been finding this kind of research already published in mainstream review articles, papers, and all that. So that's also very interesting. I'm very happy about that project as well. And well, that's mainly my 3D.
Wow, that's awesome.
Yeah.
Congratulations on getting that paper nearly complete. That's a lot. That is a very...
I'm hot already talking about that. I'm just going.
Yeah, it's like, oh, take a break. That's very exciting to hear, though.
What's happening?
All of it is very exciting and great contributions to this whole inquiry. So thank you for that. Yeah. How about you, Jamie?
Well, Inez, great job on writing all this material, on all these papers that have come out from Nassim Haramein and the research team over the last 5 years. We have a free Unified Science course in the Resonance Academy that's open to everyone. And for a long time, there were 6 modules, and Inez recently finished module 7, which was encapsulating the last several papers all in one module. So it's super in depth, and we're excited to announce it just came out in French just in the last week or so. So, and I know Spanish is coming soon, isn't that right, Inez? Are you okay? So like all the French speakers out there, you can go to resonancescience.org, hit the little flag in the upper right corner, and change it to French or Spanish. We're hoping to get Portuguese out soon, a whole translation of the website and the course, and eventually all the other online courses in the other languages. But do check out module 7 in the free course, because it's going to prepare you for this next major download that is coming, which is the new paper from Nassim Haramein and Olivier Allerol, who are publishing as soon as they can. It's a very in-depth paper. I'm sure Inez can speak to it in great detail, because that's what she's talking about when she says module 8. It's about information that we haven't even received yet, because the paper is still in progress. But that's going to be kind of the culmination of Nassim's life's work, as far as I can tell, in terms of a real unification. Maybe, Inez, you can just briefly talk about just how they're unifying the scales and what the purpose of that paper is, trying to join the physics of the big, which is Einstein's relativistic field equations, and the physics of the small, which is quantum field theory. And those two sets of physics right now and the associated math don't talk to each other perfectly. There's a big dichotomy there. That's why there's 2 sets of math. And obviously the big things are made of the small things. So at some point, the physics of the big and the physics of the small have to cross over. And that's called unification. And that is not simple. So, this next paper is going to be a major download, and that's what Inez is working on for the next phase of the free course. And hopefully that paper comes soon. But check out the module 7 in French and soon to be in Spanish.
Yeah, great. Thanks for mentioning that, Jamie. Yeah.
Thanks, Jamie. Yeah, so module 8, it's okay, so basically what we have here, so the unification of scales, it was already kind of achieved when Nassim found the quantum gravity solution to mass, which is the proton and the electron and the vacuum catastrophe as well. All of that is already unifying the scales. But it didn't unify the scales in between. So we had a quantum solution for gravity, but we didn't have all the steps in between. This means stars, galaxies, planets, and all that's in between. So what we found with the proton solution and electron is that the holographic ratio represents a potential transfer of information between surface and volume, right? And that potential transfer is one way of looking at the holographic solution. But what's coming next, and this is why Cedar Williams was so into what's coming now, is that from the perspective that's going to be published, and Nassim has given a lot of hints, and I think he later regrets of saying that because he said, oh, I spoke too much. There's another aspect to the holographic solution, which is complementary to the one we already have, and they're equivalent. But from this other aspect of the holographic solution, then you can scale. That's when you can achieve the solution for the scaling law. Yeah, and that's basically angular momentum, it's spin, basically, you know. So what they found, I mean, it's so this is why I'm saying that Cedar Williams already gave the solution if you had looked at it 100 years ago. So this is another perspective from which you find that that you have many angles to approach to the problem. You have the thermodynamic aspect, but you also have the motion and the angular momentum conservation. And from all these different aspects, you can derive the holographic solution. And if you find that, then you can understand where quantum mechanics and relativity are coming from. So this is, of course, we know quantum mechanics is coming because we have quantization, we have these units we can exchange, we have the PSU, so that's the quantum origin, no? That we already know. But the relativity aspect and we know gravity is already coming from that part, but with the relativistic aspect is coming from motion. So this part of motion, which is the dynamics of the system, this is what is also coming into pieces like tremendously, and everything is falling into this huge puzzle where everything now it's completely explained. I mean, you have Maxwell's equations already emerging from it. I mean, you have everything emerging from that. Everything. It's a revelation. It's just unbelievable. So the thing is that to find this scaling law, you basically need to create holographic scaling solution, because you had this holographic solution only for certain particles, because you had electron, proton, but now you need the whole expression, which is a fractal equation, which is in order to have that, you need a fractal scaling law, a fractal scaling factor, and that's what the paper is basically about. It's just given, but it's much more than that. I mean, it's a thesis. It's more than a thesis. It's a whole career. I mean, what's going on out is a whole career just popping out of existence.
Beautiful. Wow, that's a great description.
Yeah, so
that was very insightful. I learned some new things about it, just having gleaned what I could from what Nassim has described in the past, and you a bit, and William at times, just to get some glimpses. But that's a great overview and very insightful.
Yeah, we have to be kind of a little bit cryptic about it, but
that's good.
But I mean, it's so obvious that then, oh my Jesus Christ.
We're everybody's, of course, long time are excited for this to come out, and I'm not going to ask you when it's going to be coming out because I'm not sure you don't know, but hopefully soon.
I just said it was obvious, but in fact, I think I was unfair by saying that, because it's now you need to really understand the problem to see the simplicity of it. So now it's obvious once you understand it, but understanding that was not the easy part of it. So. So, that's, of course, the depth of the understanding gives you the simplicity. That's what.
Yeah. Good. Excellent. Thank you, Ness. All right.
Okay. Yeah.
Well, why don't we jump
Papers are a journey.
What was that?
I said every paper is a journey, and you have to let it take you, and it's not done till it's done.
Yeah.
That's how it goes.
So true.
Exactly.
Well, let's take advantage for your time here, Adam. for another 40 minutes or so.
Mm.
Jump into some questions. There's a bunch here posted by people, and what I can do is bring you on to screen when one of us addresses your question. And if you'd like to join us and say hi and have a moment of discussion, you can open up your camera and your audio. And if you would prefer not to, if you're in a location where that's not convenient or you just don't want to, that's fine. And you can just leave them off. No worries. And it's good to just keep in mind that this isn't sort of like a ongoing long discussion that you can have with us. Try to keep it brief and to the point of what's being discussed, and then we can move on to the next question as efficiently as possible.
Yeah, so go ahead and bring in our old friend Jeff Colebrook, super regular, doesn't ever miss a session, it seems like, and is usually one of the first people to post a question in the Q&A box. So just note, when you're quick on the draw with your questions, you generally get featured in these sessions. So Jeff is saying he just learned about some of Adam Curry's scientific work, including Global Consciousness Project's Entangled, a random generator app. Can we take some time to talk about time and random generators that subjects' bodies react 2 to 6 seconds before exposure to random generated stimulus, and random number computers generated anomalies starting hours before 9/11 happened? Is the universe now sending out information preparing consciousness for future universe? Continuing our time talk from the June Q&A, and any update on the Adam William paper collaboration from June. So last pieces first. No updates on William and I working on that paper together. We've both been pretty busy guys over the past couple months, but I have been continuing the research work in the data storage within the proton, and the mechanism for input output and the ratcheting between the 2 input lines and the 10 output lines in the proton. So we may go into that deeper later in this call if we get into some similar material. But for your question, happy to focus on this. Adam Curry is a friend, and the Entangled app is super cool. For those of you that don't know, it's really about detecting simultaneity and connections between places on the planet through random number generation. And this builds on the work of something called Princeton Engineering Anomalies Research Group, who I actually came across when I was about 16. And they were at the time deeply involved in random number generation process and detection and testing different kinds of results with people intending to change a random number set. Now, the random number generators that Princeton used, with everything from, a random metal ball dropping through pins and landing on a plate at the bottom to generate the number, to waterfalls where the water is dripping randomly in different points, to kind of the more conventional computer-based random number generation. And what Princeton Engineering Anomalies Research found was that there is a massively significant effect, measurable over and over and over again, when someone is actually intending for the random number set to go to either higher numbers or lower numbers, that they could actually 70% plus see that the numbers would actually change. And with certain kinds of people, for example, kids all together, all trying to get a robot who's driving within a little pin to turn in the same direction, they would have a much larger impact on the random number generators than most people would. And the other phenomena that they mentioned in their papers in the late 90s was the effect of 2 people in love trying to change the direction of the robot or the random number sequence. So this is really powerful and fascinating, because this actually opens the door up to the roots of entanglement and our relationship to the universe around us. The fact that an intentional directive, a conscious will or choice, can actually radiate out from us and affect a random number system is a phenomenal idea. But it's actually not that surprising when you start thinking about the way that you've interacted with things like your computer for many years. When I was a teenager, I also used to repair computers for my mom's friends and some of my dad's friends and sometimes my parents as well. And what I found is that usually when their computer was glitching out all the time, they would be cussing at it. They'd be being like, I don't know how to use this piece of crap, et cetera, right? And I'd go in, I'd go, okay, whoa, just maybe stand over there and let me just, all right, so what's going on with you? What's happening? And immediately it would start working for me while it was completely glitching out for them like a moment before. And they'd be like, how do you do that? I'm so bad with computers. And I'm like, right, well, that's what you're saying. And that's how you're treating this machine. And I noticed it was a phenomenon, almost every time that people were actually causing their computer to frizz out by the way that they were interacting with this electromagnetic device. And you think about it, we are full of these amazing oscillating electrons, as Inez was talking about, and we're vibrating and radiating out a field around us. And in addition, we're causing quantum vacuum fluctuations through our expression, through our choices, and through the direction of, as some of the ancients would call, our chi, our ki, our prana, which are really just waveforms, quantum vacuum gravity waves that we are instantiating out from our bodies. And yes, they do have effects on other kinds of waveforms, including electromagnetic fields, devices, etc. So it's a two-way street too. We can also pick up on major changes in the field around us. And for things like 9/11, where a lot of random number generators, which at that time, there were some early projects testing, can we detect major world events arising by the changes in these random number generators? And there was a huge change leading up to 9/11, 2001 in the random number generator sequences. Now you can say, well, was it detecting something that's happening in the future? Well, maybe, but it's also possible that that change was detecting an actual buildup of things that were happening literally in the ramp up to things like the planes hitting the towers. And, that's a whole wormhole and rabbit hole to go down. So I won't go down it too deep. But there are some very, very interesting things about that event. For example, like on the day before, September 10th, Rumsfeld announced that the US government had lost $7 trillion. Oops. And, oh, don't worry, we've moved all the records to the records room in the Pentagon and we'll find it. Oh, but that was the exact part of the Pentagon hit by the plane or missile or something, where no seats, no passengers were ever found in this, particular plane. And also there was supposedly like massive amounts of gold hidden under those two towers. And there were complaints over 3 days leading up to 9/11 of massive dump trucks driving by out from the building every night over a 3-day period between 2 a.m. and 4 a.m. So not to get into too much conspiracy, but it's possible that there was a sequence of events building up to what was going to happen. And you can imagine the intensity, the emotional charge, the anxiety, the stuff that was going on with whatever was leading up to that, including with if there were, people on planes preparing to, take over those planes and wreck them into buildings, if that even was what happened. It certainly would have had a major effect on a lot of people. And the event also after was going to create a huge ripple effect. And I do think that when there are massive enough changes in events in time, those changes in events can create ripples both before and after the event itself. So you almost could say like you pick up foreshocks to something that's massive that's going to be happening. And why would you be able to do that? Like, can't everything change based on the moment and in the time that we're in? Well, this goes deeper into time. And the reality that I think that a lot of us see if we really pay attention is that once certain flows of events have a certain amount of momentum, there's almost going to be at least some things that are a guaranteed result. For example, if you're driving a car and you're going 80 miles an hour and something literally jumps in front of your car, like within 10 or 15 feet, you can make the choice to turn the wheel as fast as you can possibly think it to avoid it, or hit the brakes. But the momentum of that car is going to hit that thing. You know, you probably all had like a plastic bag floating around and it like hits your car. You can't do anything about it when you're at a certain level of speed and momentum. And I think time works that way. Events create momentum, which give rise to the events that are coming down the pipe. And so this is, I think, where the game of psychic abilities and entanglement and using tarot cards and things like that becomes really valuable, because we can see what's the momentum. And we also have the choice and the power to make changes, because a lot of times things are not coming at us as fast as, 80 or 100 miles an hour, going towards an event. And so we can adjust, we can, avert the catastrophe. We can create a new opportunity out of whatever is happening.
Yeah, as usual, Adam, thank you. What about the shorter distances that are, the 2 to 6 seconds, or that also the stories that people get, that intuition is something's happening, just, either from an angel or, again, from the random number generator, their bodies react to what's, if a bad, if it's a picture of a car accident, their bodies will react to that 2 to 6 seconds before it's even generated.
Yeah, I think the 2 to 6 seconds is the like clearly provable phenomena that's easy to see, that there are connections between where we're at now and what we're about to experience, and that there is some connection to will and choice in the sort of effect of consciousness on what we perceive within space-time. But I don't think that's a limit necessarily. I think that the 2 to 6 seconds is probably the most easily measured, but that same effect is occurring even over months or over years in some cases. And we can see this within the sort of conscious practice of, like, as we learn how to step into and become certain states of resonance, we believe certain things are possible, and then suddenly those things happen to us. And we often can reflect back and realize, like, wow, I didn't even think this was possible this many years ago. And then I had this idea and vision that I would do this at some point. I didn't know how it was going to happen, but it finally did happen. That there is this, this driving force to the power of our will and consciousness in the way that space-time operates and unfolds before us. And this makes sense from a quantum information standpoint when you start to realize that the memory storage of the entire universe is imprinted in every proton within the universe, and that we're entangled with 10 to the 40th of those protons with every single proton in our body, right? And we are actually in this sort of synchronized field that is responsive to the changes within our own consciousness, because space-time and consciousness are completely intertwined.
The Taoists say everything has a soul. So I think, and you see the soul in the computers and you honor that. I guess that's why they get better. But also our great brother Nassim talks about, I love getting away from the linear time. So when I hear these, that helps get me out of the habit of thinking linear and go vertical versus going vertical. So thank you. It's always expands my mind. Love you guys. Thank you. Many blessings.
Thank you, sir. Always a pleasure to have you here.
Yeah, thanks for always being here. Appreciate it. Great. Ines, I see a question for you here. That's at the top of the list now. You want to take that one? I'll bring up Oriana.
And you need to unmute, Ines.
Oh, yes, you are muted. I couldn't see your icon there.
Okay, so Oriana, is she coming to the call? she's asking, could you speak more on how the double Taurus dynamics is a feedback feed-forward mechanism? Sure. Okay. There she is. Hi, Arena.
It is.
Well, again,
Hi.
This was a continuation from our talk, but I also was feeling what Adam was just speaking to, that the proton that holds all the information of the universe, and that feedback feed forward mechanism, the scalability. Could you just speak more to that, and how that
Yeah.
and all of what you were sharing earlier as well?
Yes. Okay. Well, there are many aspects to it. First, you have that the PSU on its own has the double Taurus dynamics. This oscillation, the vacuum fluctuation that we talk about is in reality, it's a double Taurus dynamics. So it is a mini feedback feed-forward mechanism. So on its own, it's got all the aspects that you see at large, just on a single PSU. So, and this is, so you could even say that it is if I, for instance, I like explaining consciousness as this process of information exchange and feedback loop. I would say then that this PSU is like a particle of proto-consciousness. It is proto-conscious. It is conscious in this sense of having this dynamics in its own. Because that's possible, then you can have this behavior of multiple PSU ensembling together and having this collective behavior, which is just an enhancement of this feedback feed-forward mechanism in a collective of PSUs. Okay. So let's recall as well that when we have the holographic solution, which is this ratio between surface and volume, we have voxelated this volume with PSUs, and we have the surface as well with PSUs. So this and basically we also have described that this proton on its own has a singularity in it. It's a vorticity coming from a singularity, right? So meaning by that when you have this collection of PSUs forming the proton, you would have this double Taurus dynamics, but coming from the collective behavior this time. And this double Taurus dynamics has got a singularity on the center, let's say. And it's got to be a double Taurus dynamics, because if not, you wouldn't have the singularity. Okay, so the singularity and double Taurus dynamics is basically synonym. That's the dynamics of a singularity is a double Taurus dynamics. Okay. So then when you have, okay, so now let's say we have the proton, and you see this double Taurus dynamics. In this double Taurus dynamics, there's one part that it's going like outwards through on the horizon, on the equatorial plane, let's say. That part of the information, it's going outwards, it's radiating outwards, like we see in galaxies, for instance, where matter is building up, you know. You could see that. Have you seen this depiction of the double Taurus where you have the horizontal plane where there is accumulation? Okay, so that's matter is, it's like kind of building over there, but the field on its own, it's having a part which is going upwards and then back down again through what we would call gravity, the gravitational part, which is going inwards. The same, it's happening on the other side, because it's like a Coriolis situation. It's like an inverted on the other side. So the mechanism is inverted on the other direction, on the other side. Okay, so then you have one part of the field which is going outwards, which could be the radiation, the electromagnetic radiation, what we call electromagnetic radiation, and the other aspect of the field which is going inwards, what we call gravity. Okay, so we could say that in this feedback, so we could say the outgoing part, it's giving information to the outside, and the ingoing part is taking information from the outside. So that's what we mean when we say it's a feedback feed-forward mechanism, because you have this continuous exchange from the in and out, coming into the singularity. Okay. So, and when you have that, I missed the point. Wait. Okay, and so that's so basically when you talk about magnetism, radiation, particles, and fields, what you're talking really is of you're talking about different aspects of this feedback feed-forward mechanism. So everything is the feed-forward mechanism, but the part that's doing this dynamic, you call it gravity. The part that's doing that dynamic, you call it electromagnetic radiation. That part that's accumulating like it's a particle. But everything, it's part of the same mechanism. Everything, fields, particles, and forces are aspects of this feedback feed-forward mechanism. They're just different aspects of the whole, and the whole is the feedback feed-forward mechanism. So now that we have seen that, like for instance in a proton, we can see that what the scaling law will show is how then this dynamic, which is like in the context of the proton, can communicate with the other double torus dynamics, which are nested outside, because this is nested inside a larger double torus, which is nested out in a larger double torus, like that. So this nesting of double toruses is connecting all scales. Okay, so you have, because part of that information will go up to the other, and this is not happening in any ratio, it's happening in very particular ratios. So this, you see, this steps, this is like music, it's happening in harmonics. So in this harmonics, this is where you can have this communication exchange, which connects all scales. So basically you're having matter production, field creation, forces, and all of that happening at very particular ratios.
Okay. A light wave. Waves of light become observable as a sphere, is a photon of double torus.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. Everything. Yeah.
It's part of the whole feedback feed-forward system then around that singularity of the observable.
Yes.
Okay, and I'm still wondering about the unobservable universe, or the Planckian scale, and when it comes into being Planck scale observable. Okay. Is that what happens with the photon? But also I'm not even sure how to word it, but where time becomes sub-Planckian scale time, is time actually compressing, or is matter compressing into a smaller time scale to compress the data that as part of that feed-forward mechanism?
Yeah, that's a very good question. That will be addressed in model 8.
I'm gonna wait till then. Okay,
because you know it's
very insightful. Insightful question for sure.
Yeah, very insightful question.
Okay.
Because
the biophoton then is part of this double torus feedback feed-forward. That's one of the questions I had for William too, was the biophoton field being read by the actual physical field, and what that mechanism would actually be.
Yeah, I would also like have in mind that like for me, like the meaning of these double torus dynamics and the singularity, because I have been working on a model which is called the quantum of consciousness, which is looking at this PSU, at each PSU as a particle of consciousness, because of what I just said. And so, and this came into, when I was working on that model, it came because I was thinking about light matter interaction, considering quantum phenomena. It was something of the sort. And what resulted from that was an analysis in which, since I couldn't find where the absolute observer was placed, since there was no way of locking an event in a dimension, if you didn't have a concatenation of reference frames of observation, because basically that's how you translate the fact that you don't have an absolute observer. Because of that, you have singularity. That's another way of looking at it, but from a more, let's say, philosophical point of view. But the interesting thing is that the lack of an absolute observer, which translates into the creation of this singularity and this double Taurus dynamic, which is basically equivalent. Let's say that it's a process that goes beyond. I would say that's somehow what I feel that many ancient traditions and cultures around the globe have been exploring, because the problem of the reference frame and the observer is like the crucial point in this, in physics or in any domain that we want to talk about. When you talk about any subject, you always say with respect to what? If not, we couldn't have any conversation at all. There's always a reference with respect to something that we're talking about. So singularity, in my understanding, is exactly, it would be the search and the lack of an absolute observer. So we don't have an absolute observer. So and that's a very interesting approach, and it connects with that's how I derived the double Taurus dynamics, which was the same that I found when Nassim solved the Einstein field equations, having Coriolis and torque. So that was when I was like, whoa, you can really link these two aspects of which were apparently very different, because I was talking about light matter interaction. That's how I got into these diagrams. And he was solving Einstein's field equation with torque and Coriolis. So you have this subtle unification of two aspects of reality, which were apparently very disconnected. And so it seems that that was part of the same thing. So it was interesting for me, because it kind of allowed me to put some philosophy into of course, there's a lot of philosophy in the holographic model, but my question has always been, what is the origin of the PSU? Why is there a PSU? I mean, what's the origin of the PSU, of this vacuum fluctuation? What's the origin of it? And my answer to it was consciousness in this sense, the sense of a lack of an absolute observer.
So that it appears that the universe itself is being born in each moment, that it expands as a double Taurus and in every moment. And the ancients called it Zeptepi, translated first time, but really first occurrence. And that first occurrence was continuous. Right, so it becomes not so much of a where does that happen, but when. Before the universe exists, and then it exists in a nanosecond that becomes known at the Planck scale, observable. But the unobservable universe is being born in the moment. And could that influence then random generators if you knew just before it occurs, and it occurs in every moment?
You can think of it as like the cosmic onion. It's Soul's thought of the cosmic onion has these layers. You know, the universe is growing, and it grows by 1 Planck length in radius, or diameter, every Planck second. So it's just a continuous layers after layers after layers of time and space. And it all has to talk to itself, or else the universe gets confused and it doesn't stay the way it is. And it's not confused. We're confused.
The universe is not confused.
The universe is not confused.
Right,
This is
that's
very important to remember. We're confused.
We're confused.
The universe knows exactly what it's doing right now. It has no problem hanging out for billions of years.
Sure.
It's stuff staying fairly consistent. So Yeah, the whole mystery of time and how all this thing is talking to itself is such an important central question to figure out. And a lot of physics is just not looking very closely at that. They're off on their own tangents. It's important, like, to go back to the very, very basic root of everything and figure out, okay, well, what's really going on? Don't just tell me stuff's popping in and out of existence or it goes into another dimension. Define dimension, define time, define mass. Where's mass come? What's charge? They don't know. We don't know. We have no idea. We're just like, can we figure this out? Quick, let's figure this out, because we're kind of messing up right now. We're blowing stuff up because we think there's a lack of energy and stuff like this. Phew. We're in the old days. We're in the dawn ages, thankfully.
Still
At least.
It's
It's going to get better. But unified physics is so crucial for so many things outside of physics. It's
That's it.
everything.
The universe is being born anew in each moment. So if we hold this beautiful universe that we're observing at that moment, that it exists in its absolute wondrous, spectacular way, that's our future. That's
Yeah, beautifully said. I love that. That sums it up very clearly. Thanks, Ariana. Thank you again, as always, for being here. Very
Yes.
interesting inquiry.
Yeah, I'll wait for module 7 now. 8.
Yeah, module 8 coming. All right, be well. All right, Adam, let's make a good use of your time in the next 10 minutes or so here that you have. Why don't you jump in on this?
All right. Yeah, let's see here. I could speak a little bit to the question. You and I could both jump in on this one, Marshall, because it looks like you tagged the one from Luli McFarlane.
Yeah, great.
Yeah, I'll just start off, and I'd love to hear what you have to say about it too. But
Yeah.
she asked, I'm curious to understand what mechanism is at work when pouring some potentiated arc water into another fluid compels it to potentiate itself. Why not remain separate? Consequently, I drink arc water. It goes to work into my body. Is blood now potentiated? Love you all deeply, the work you do, and what it does to my humble brain. Thank you, Lily. Very much a pleasure. Yeah. So the heart of the question here is really around, first of all, what the arc crystal does and what is potentiated water or potentiated fluid. So, a few of us are wearing these little guys. For those of you that don't know, they're a form of molecularly aligned quartz that's grown in a lab, where all of the molecules are very precisely aligned. So you've got a quartz type structure, but since it's lab generated, it's extremely clean and clear, which then also enables what we like to call quantum vacuum potentiation, or a effect on the quantum vacuum field. It acts as like a little mini torus flow form accelerator to move the quantum vacuum through the crystal oscillations. And any crystal will do that, but the clearer and more clean the crystal is, the more effective it is at doing that. So this is a very highly potent structural crystal to do that. And it's, tetrahedral format. It's wrapped in titanium. It's got magnetic bumpers, so you can link them to other pieces. But what goes on in water? So this is a big question. And what we know for sure is the output of the studies and the work that people like William Brown have done that show literally 400% increase in sprouting rates, increase in growth rates in plants across, literally hundreds of experiments. We've shown the effect of sort of improvement or increase in growth rates in life forms like plants. And when you get down to the actual molecular science of what's happening in water, what I believe William theorizes and is in my opinion what's occurring, and others have suggested that this is possible to occur. A gentleman who wrote the book The Fourth Phase of Water talks about this a little bit, is that the structure of the oxygen and the hydrogen molecules, you've got oxygen and the two hydrogens sort of ratchet off one side, similar to a pentagonal angle. And what happens is when water molecules get into the right flow form in rotation or in a magnetic field of some kind, or a movement of the quantum vacuum field, as we believe the arc does, it will cause those molecules to start connecting and chaining into spiral-like forms. And because of the angle of the way the oxygen and the hydrogens go together, that spiral-like form is basically a pentagonal circuit. And it's similar, you could say, to any pentagonal rotating structure, which DNA is a pentagonal helical structure. It overall, the molecular structural form, if you look at it down from the top, it looks like a 10-pointed star. It's two rotations of pentagrams in conjunction with each other. And also, that turns out to be, based on my quantum geometric theory, the actual structure of the inputs and outputs inside the proton, what I like to call the vector vortices, the 12 vectors going in and out of the proton that regulate the curvature of space-time in the structure of the PSU and how they bond together inside of the proton. So here's the thing, is if you have water, or you have a fluid where you've got a structural energy moving through it, a certain kind of vibrational wave that's moving through it, and the molecules are aligned to that, and the internal structure of the water is now propagating that same vibrational circuitry, so to speak, and you add that fluid into another molecular liquid substance, what it's doing is it's going to try to entrain the other molecules to move in that same dynamic, in that same format. And you have to be reasonable. It's not like if you put a drop in, it's going to necessarily cause the entire tank of something to entrain. But we do know that small amounts of impacts of certain types of fields can continue to ripple into larger and larger fields. So with a decent amount of water structured in this way inside of another fluid, it's very likely that that fluid will take on a lot of those properties. And that's also just because of the diffusion properties of water. So all those oxygen, hydrogen chains that are in the water are going to spread out through that other type of fluid as much as possible, unless it's oil or something like that, right? So, any other like highly diffusive fluid, it will work, especially other ones with water basing and other fluids that have lots of H2O molecules in it. So, Marshall, anything to add on that or remixes?
Wow, that was an amazing description of what's happening.
Thanks,
with the arc crystal. And I would just say, I think just to kind of expand on that same idea around the mixing of any other fluids, really it's fundamentally the water molecules are most, we could say, resonant and receptive to that geometry of the arc crystal, which is also the same geometry of the underlying Planck field, the structure of space. So therefore, as Adam was saying, and if the liquid has water molecules in it, they may have a tendency to come into that symmetry that Adam was talking about, that resonance, or they may not, again, depending on what the fluid is. And so, the optimal intake for our bodies is water in that case. If you mix it with something else, yes, you will retain some of that coherent organization of the molecules. And at the same time, you may also dilute that coherence just because you're introducing other molecules and other non-coherent water molecules into it. So there's that consideration. You also were asking about the blood in our bodies, which obviously there's a lot of water throughout all of our, the whole cellular system of our bodies. Obviously the majority of our physical content is water. And in fact, from a molecular standpoint, it's something like 99.97, or maybe it's 98%, something around there, water molecules in our body. So really, we're just mostly made of water molecules. So whether it's blood or any other, fluid or tissue or cellular system and substance in our body, it really is mostly composed of water up to that high end amount. And so the effects of the arc crystal and in blood and all of the systems in our body is really quite profound in the potential of being able to create that coherent organization and therefore that coherent communication with the feedback feed forward aspect of the field itself. So I would add just that for now.
And I would add just a little visualization of, you've seen water that's really cold and then all of a sudden ice crystal forms and it just goes throughout the entire structure of all the water and then the water freezes really quickly. That is physics that happens, crystallization. And so water is ready to do that at a moment's notice, space transition, and it goes through all these states. So you can imagine the energy transfer happening in just for us to be able to visualize what's going on. I think that's a cool thing to remember.
Yeah, that's a good one.
Yes, thank you very much. First of all, for taking my question and allowing me to participate. I had not finished my question, but I'll ask a couple more things about it because usually on Wednesdays, I'm trying to split the atom. I'm very busy. So by wearing our arc, by the proximity of it, it's potentiating us, even if we don't drink the water. Is that correct?
Yes, that is correct.
You are the water in that case. You're just
all right.
You're just basically
you're the bottle of water.
Yeah. I mean, you can actually literally think about it like this little thing is just magnifying the flow of the quantum vacuum, creating a little subtle toroidal current that's moving through it. And you're placing that on your body. And so as that current is moving through your body, it's increasing the flow of the quantum vacuum through your cellular matrix, and thus influencing also the water in the cellular matrix as well. And because this effect of this potential chaining of water molecules enables higher charge potentially in the water, like electromagnetic charge, you're just kind of like increasing the charge potential within that region of your body, and that water is going to be moving around your body. When you're wearing it over your heart's pumping blood to your whole body. So you're spreading that potentiated charged water throughout your body. It has a significant effect. For those of us, when we first got the harnesses for the arcs and we started wearing them here, because I still have one of the old naked ones that I keep on my desk, one of the OGs from the original Hawaii set. But when I first started wearing it, you'd actually notice it felt intense, almost like there's some kind of pressure in here. And I feel like some of it was just cellular, like your cells and your organs, like getting used to the fact that there's suddenly now a higher charge rate moving through that field. And I also don't wear it all the time because of that, but I do enjoy wearing it on occasion, especially days I'm a little more tired or feeling like I've had a little extra work. It sometimes just helps, like it creates a little bit of a booster and a little more clarity.
That's very interesting. And thank you so much for the explanations, because being a visual person, I can imagine and visualize all these mechanisms at work. It's really very helpful. Now, about a year ago, I also watched one of these presentations with Nassim, and he mentioned that his sister had some thyroid problems, and she had worn her art crystal intentionally for that purpose, and her thyroid problems pretty much resolved themselves. So I've been doing the same for the same reason, despite the fact that my thyroid problems are really not that significant. And next month I go for testing.
Mm-hmm. Oh, good. Please let us know what you find out.
And of course, last time William mentioned that there's going to be a show, and that some biological studies are going to commence. And I'm curious if that is going to confirm also the question about the thyroid. When is it going to be in Orlando? Do you know?
I don't know if any of us have that specific information. But next time William is on, we can inquire that. about that with him.
So
It should
I
be
think he said November, but so
Okay.
thank you.
Well,
That's my question. Thank you for
I'll
answering.
offer one last chime in, and then I've got to jump for today, unfortunately. And I'll just remind us all that we are all highly potentiated crystalline structures.
Yes.
In other words, our bodies also act like magnifiers and directors of quantum vacuum energy. And so, if you have a wound or you have something going on in your body, you can also increase the flow potential within that area of the body simply by actually using your fingers and pointing into that area and directing consciously your chi, prana, quantum vacuum fluctuating field through that point. And that's the heart of shiatsu. That's the heart of Chinese medicine. It's the heart of acupuncture. It's actually just being aware that your body is full of circuitry, and the circuitry gets blocked sometimes. And sometimes the key is to open up the circuitry. And that also means, like sometimes if you've got congestion going on here, the answer is actually not here. It's actually down here on your wrist because the circuit is not open all the way. So I highly recommend people take a look into particularly meridian sciences in Chinese medicine if they want to understand a little bit more about how the circuitry of the body works, and also can use that to understand how the art crystal is interacting with the body's circuitry. All right, so that's
Thank you.
my last
Thank you
words for
for that.
today. Love you
Thanks for
guys.
that, Adam.
Yes,
Thanks for joining us as
thank
always.
you so much,
Take care,
Adam.
brother.
I
Such
am
a
an
pleasure.
energy worker, so I have
Oh,
obtained
nice.
the ebook and I applying these principles. Nassim mentioned that perhaps there will be a glove so that we can accommodate the crystal to the glove, and that will be very helpful.
Yeah, that'd be cool.
Help with
Crystal
that.
fingers. Awesome. All right, take care,
Bye, Adam.
everybody.
Well, thanks.
Thanks.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Thank you. Where are you located, Lily?
I am in Oregon, in the US.
Wonderful. Great. Well, thank you so much for being here.
You're welcome.
Thanks. Great
I
question.
try to be here as much as possible, and I always watch the recordings.
All right. Thank you. We
I think
appreciate that.
I can comment a little about the crystals being analyzed in Greece. The person who's collaborating with us is Lydia Japonopoulos de Leon. She's giving the elective called the Science of Sacred Temples. That's her course. Her course is that one. And so because she worked with a team in Greece, composed of many different researchers and geologists, and she did her PhD on that subject, she's collaborating with Nassim, and so they took crystals and they're doing these experiments in laboratories in Greece. And so I think that's starting very soon, if not already started. Yeah.
Okay, very
Yeah.
interesting. Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Science of the Secret Temple.
Yeah, that's in the our you go to resonancescience.org, our website, and it's in
Okay.
the electives. Yeah.
Thank you.
And Jamie put a link in the chat. Yeah,
Both on YouTube and Zoom, I just put it.
Okay, great. All
Thank
right.
you, Jamie.
Be well, Lily. Thank you.
There's a question here from that's like a continuation of the feed forward from Richard Harenberg.
Mhm.
So maybe we can continue that one,
Okay.
which is in fact the one that follows Oriana's question. Yeah.
You want to go ahead and read it?
Yeah, it's so the question is, how does the feedback work for the Planck micro wormhole network? How does the feedback work for the Planck micro wormhole network? That's complicated. Okay. Yes. So, okay. So let's read. He's coming. Okay. Hi, Richard.
Hey, Richard.
Hey. You're mute.
Hello.
Hello. Okay, so you're okay, so we can answer that question from very different perspectives. Let's take the one concerning the proton. You know that when you have the proton, you have so you have these voxels in the volume, and you have the ones on the surface, which is the equatorial area of each PSU on the surface of the proton, right?
Yes.
So these PSUs on the surface are acting as wormholes, as wormholes terminations for connections. So the proton is in fact, that's why it is so so stable, is because it is able, because it's got 10 to the 40 wormhole terminations on the surface. So that's really very fast communication network with all other protons on the universe. So the holographic and this work, the paper that's about to come, is already explaining to us that the Planck is not the smaller scale. We have sub-Planckian network connections as well. And the speed at which information travels, let's say the equivalent of the speed of light at our scale is what we know. But in the sub-Planckian scale, it is 10 to the 40 times the speed of light. So that's how fast information moves at that scale. That for that scale, we're like frozen. We're like completely, let's say we move at very, very slow speeds with respect to the sub-Planckian scale. So so this is, and imagine that. So, and the relationship is scaling such that the Planck is between the sub-Planck and our universe. Is that the scale?
I think that's right.
That's right, right? With
Sub-Planck to the universe, the Planck is the
Planck, yeah.
Yep.
Is at the middle. From the sub-Planck to the universe, the Planck is at the middle. So this we can see clearly how there's this scaling law perfectly falling into pieces beautifully. And so basically what we have at the proton scale is this network of wormhole terminations at each proton having 10 to the 40 network and wormhole terminations to connect to all other protons. So the entanglement, so that's the reason for entanglement. That's what entanglement is coming from. The entanglement is coming from this network of wormhole terminations, which communicate very like for us it's instantaneously, but we can see because of the speeds involved at the sub-Planckian scale, these speeds are very high. So we see it instantaneous, but it's really 10 to 40 times the speed of light. That's what that would be like the refresh time of the universe, the refresh time, or the speed of thought. Nassim also likes to call it that way. It's like this refresh time of the universe, and it's really fast at the sub-Planckian scale. Now, at our scale, we have these network terminations of the protons, which is what we call entanglement.
Okay. Now, the question I had about feedback related to how adaptive systems are based on feedback. And so knowing that the Planck network has feedback says that it's going to be adaptive, that it's probably creating the universe, and how that feedback occurs would give us a clue as to how that process works. So I've been trying to figure that out, and I picture it as a circuit. So I picture the network as maybe like a neural network or a big electronic circuit. And it's got an input and an output, just to keep it simple. And the output connects back to the input. And that's what the feedback is, except that it's certainly more sophisticated than that. And what seems to be the case with the structure at various octaves, at various scales, is that this network seems to concentrate at certain scales. And you could sort of picture that if you drew it. If you drew all the protons, and then you drew a bunch of protons that made a molecule and said, well, there's sure a lot of connections going to that molecule. And then between molecules, there's lots of connections. So you can see it's not certainly not so simple, but I picture that's feedback happens at each scale, at like the molecular level and the atomic level and the Earth level and the solar system level and the galaxy level and so on. And so that's sort of a simple version, but I've been trying to figure out a little more in terms of understanding that. Oh, but just to give some background, computer people know a lot about this. A lot of the algorithms that they use, even for cell phones and the internet, are based on this. And they're what they call fast Fourier transforms, or discrete fast Fourier transforms, because they do it digitally. And so those are structured like a complicated feedback network, or maybe not so complicated because it repeats a simple mechanism over and over and over again. And in fact, the mechanism is just a combination of addition and subtraction. So it's really simple, but there's lots of them. Anyway, that's what I'm trying to figure out.
You know, you're talking basically about fractals. This is how Benoit Mandelbrot found, in fact, the idea of fractality, because he was analyzing the noise in the wires of communication. He had been hired. I don't remember, but which company had hired him, and he was supposed to analyze the noise in the wire communication because they wanted to optimize the transmission of communication through the wires. And this is how he understood that there was this pattern that was replicating at different scales, no matter the size of the cable, or there were things that were repeating in with respect to the scale. So that's where the idea of fractals came from to him. And you're talking about an iteration. So because you know, when the equation of fractal is you see, it's very simple. You have it's an iteration, so that's a feedback loop. You have a pattern, a value before, then you have equal to a value to another value plus a raised to a certain number and a constant. And the only condition is that they have to be complex numbers. So you have the real and imaginary parts of that equation is what creates the fractality. For instance, for the Mandelbrot set, Gaston Julia was the one who developed that first, and then Mandelbrot used that, and he used some particular conditions in order to have that closed set that he found, which is the known fractal Mandelbrot fractal. But that's important because in the context of the holographic theory, that's exactly what we find. It's a fractal equation. So it's a iterative equation. So the scaling law is using a fractal holographic ratio. So this means that now we will see the one we are used to know, but it will have further terms, which are the terms that contain this fractal iteration. Yeah, and that's what it's giving the fractality. And that's so you have in fact you have at the same scale, of course, you have this feedback loop that's evolving, let's say, because as a fractal you don't have the same information in and out. There's information processing, so that's why there's an evolution. But part of this, in this feedback loop that I described, the double Taurus dynamics, is part of this information that's going to permeate to the other scale. But this is happening coherently. It's not something aleatory. It's happening because of this ratio which is governed, let's say, by certain scaling factors, which have to do with resonance. So the concept of resonance is directly implied in fractality and holography. These are all different aspects of the same process of feedback loop information exchange.
Oh, so you said several things that are really interesting. I understood the part of Mandelbrot and reducing the noise, because you use that circuit that I described, that network. If you can describe the noise, all you do is subtract it out. It's easy to eliminate the noise once you're able to measure it.
Yes.
And the fractal network, as you call it, is a method of measuring the noise. And as part of the feedback, you throw away the noise and increase the signal. And that produces an amazing outcome. And I've been fascinated by that. I basically, I call it producing order out of chaos, because the input of the network can be a random number, can be totally chaotic, and the output can be total unity, total order. And so I've been trying to understand that a little more. Oh, and I call it a matrix inversion. So what I say is that the Planck micro wormhole network performs a matrix inversion. And that does exactly what I described. It goes from maximum entropy at the input to minimum entropy at the output. So it defies the second law of thermodynamics. It creates minimum entropy, and the universe is wired that way.
Yeah.
So I've been trying to understand that better. Now, just one other comment. The talk about random numbers and global consciousness was really interesting, because I've looked into the Global Consciousness Project. And one of the things I've concluded is that there is no such thing as a random number. And if you try to write out a random number, it gets pretty difficult, because there's always some non-randomness to it. Now, so in doing a little thought experiment on that, I said, well, let me try a few interesting numbers, like something simple like 1/3. So I said, well, that's 0.33333, and it goes on forever. So you convert that to binary, and instead of being some infinite long number, it's still sort of infinitely long, but it's 10101010 on forever. More like a wave, like a square wave, going 101010. And other fractions do that also, like the same thing for 1/6. And and then if you want to get fancy, I took the constant alpha, and I said, I wonder what it looks like in binary. And it was 100100100100100, and on and on. And I said, my gosh, that's not hardly, well, certainly not random, and it's not complicated. It's more like a kind of wave. Oh, and by the way, if you wanted to try this, there are calculators on Google that you can look up that will convert for you from binary to decimal and decimal to binary. Right. So you can take a decimal number that you're curious about, and then it'll create the binary number. And let's see, one other thing. Oh, if you went from binary to decimal and you just said, well, I wonder what number 10101010 would be. And it turns out to be a fairly complicated number, because it depends on how many 10s you count.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not it's not so simple as 1/3 or something.
It won't give you the constant, right? It won't give you the fine structure constant.
Yeah.
Yeah. In order to have the fine structure constant, you would have to have that number up to infinity.
Yes.
Up to at least up to the time of the universe, so that you would have the fine structure constant. That's another way of looking at the holographic solution. That's an amazing idea. Amazing.
Oh yeah. It was fascinating to me, and I still experiment with it.
Yeah.
Because every once in a while I get another idea to try to see what it looks like in binary. Oh, and when I picture the network, I picture it calculating in binary.
That's great.
That seems like the natural, and that's the same as being quantized.
Yeah, it's the quantized system, exactly.
Yeah, that's just the same.
Which is the foundational nature of the physics to begin with. Yeah, that's great. Very fascinating insights that you're sharing. And that
So I'm still, but keep thinking about how the feedback works, because that's, it's more complicated. It throws out the noise, I think, and keeps some part that it's maximizing.
Right.
And it does that just by this, if you want to call it a geometric pattern, it does this automatically just by the pattern that it uses. Oh, and by the way, I think that's same for biology, for the neural network. I think it's doing the same thing. So so I'll have to see what William thinks about this.
That would be great.
Because the similarity in biology is that these amazing, unique things assemble themselves. And in nanotechnology, they call that self-assembly. But these amazing, out of billions and billions and billions of possibilities, somehow the system picks out the very best choice, and that's what it produces.
Maximum efficiency.
And I think this network,
sharing the insights, Richard.
I think this network does that.
Well, thank you so much. I appreciate you sharing your insights and a lot of deep investigation you've been doing as well.
Well, I'm just curious.
What's the name of the network you're using? Are you using a network, or you just created it, or?
Oh, this is in my mind mostly.
Oh, okay.
But I did, just as another comment, you can now buy a very high quality random number generator and plug it into, it's built on what do you call it? Just a USB plug-in. And let's see, it'll cost maybe a couple $100, but it puts out, I think about 10 megabits of random digits a second. And so you can do interesting experiments, and you can save them on your disk drive and have a random number that's 100 gigabytes long, and then try to figure out whether it's really random. And by the way, it's not. You can analyze it.
Thank
Great.
you.
Well, thanks so much, Richard, for being here and sharing your insights and your questions with us.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you.
All right. Good. Take care.
Okay. So there's a question.
It's another 15 minutes or so, I think. Let's see if Jamie has something he wants to jump in on at this time.
Michael asks, if the brain creates a hologram of our present reality, besides ourselves, where does that holographic signal go? Universal consciousness? Now, I love these kinds of broad, almost philosophical physics questions, because this question is basically saying, that we're creating our own perspective or perception holographically of our present moment of time and space. And so the question is, besides ourselves, where does that holographic signal go? And that to me implies that that it has a direction to it. And I think the whole point of a lot of what we were talking about this whole particular Q&A is that you can't just separate it out. It's not going one direction. It's always both, as Nissim likes to say. It's always going out and it's always going in, because there's only two directions. There's no right and left. There's no north and south. There's no up and down, right? The universe doesn't know any of those things. All it knows is toward something or away from something, and that being singularity. So like you were saying, and as before, coming in is gravity, going out is electromagnetism, and it's happening at the same time all the time. So you are that, right? We are that. Biology is the ultimate self-assembly mechanism, right? Where we're always feeding the field information and we're always getting information from the field, and you can't turn it off. You can go to sleep and you can feel like you're turning that off, but boy, does that really rev up when you go to sleep, right? It's not stopping. So
Right.
where does that go? It's not going anywhere. It's like you are the one thing that is there. There's only one thing. The sim likes to say there's only one thing, and it's a field that's spinning. And it's the way you describe how that field is spinning in these ratios and in these regions of space and in these scalar dimensions. That's the physics, that how you're describing how this stuff works. And I just wanted to point out too the visualization of that holographic quantum network and how it all works is like, okay, so we've been hearing about how the proton is made of PSUs, these Planck spherical units, and the Planck spherical units are so small compared to the proton that there's 10 to the 60 of them inside of a proton, a one with 60 zeros. And if you holographically tile the outside of the proton with a flower of life pattern, which is interacting spherical waveforms, there's 10 to the 40 of those on the surface. And each one of those makes a quantum wormhole that comes off that proton, which is actually a miniature black hole. And so you're like, okay, there's 10 to the 40 little wormholes. So how many subplonks can fit in a quantum wormhole? Well, wait a second. The Planck is halfway in size between the subplonk and the universe. So an unbelievably large number of subplonks can fit, exchanging information out of each of those 10 to the 40 quantum wormholes that come off of every proton in the entire universe, right? That don't slow down, they don't stop, they're continuously spinning since the supposed Big Bang. And so, yeah, the universe is having no problem communicating with itself and keeping its network together. We think of the proton as super small, and then we think of these little Plancks and these little Planck wormholes, and then you're like, wait, that's gigantic. That's like fitting, a solar system through a black hole. So the universe is doing just fine again. And it's up to us to try to figure out how that's working. And we're using the very mechanism that we're describing to describe the thing. So we are the feedback mechanism loop of the universe talking to itself.
I want us also just to speak to this question, just to clarify a little bit about just the way the question is posed. If the brain creates a hologram of our present reality. So just, I would bring Michael on, but I think he has gone off the session already, to just get a little more clarification about the inquiry. But from my, I think the understanding of the nature of the field and biological system in the brain is that it's really not the brain creating a hologram. The brain is perceiving the hologram as interacting with the hologram, is a antenna system that is holographically interacting with the entire field. And the entire field is the hologram already. And so it's not that the brain is creating a holographic image, or let's say a hologram of our present reality. It is actually an integral part of the existing hologram that is the reality at all scales. And so it's just a component of that field at our scale that is providing, to what Inez was talking about before, a frame of reference as a human being at our scale in a biological system on this planet, in this universe, in this solar system. We have a frame of reference, and that brain, our brain, and the brains of all the other creatures, you could go into the electrical systems of all the trees and the rocks and minerals down into the crystals. All of it are frames of reference across all these scales. So our brain is our version, basically, you could say, of what is coordinating our perception and interaction with the universal hologram, and therefore is not literally itself creating the hologram. Good question. Really, I love that kind of an inquiry. Yeah. Well, how about we do one more and then we can complete. Ines, you're here for a good long time today. You want to just touch in on one more and we can, and then we can wrap up.
Yeah, I'll take the next question from Anton Broadhurst. So he's asking, from Model 7, there's a note: the emission spectrum of an element is usually given in terms of wavelength, which is the inverse of the frequency. The emission spectrum is unique to each molecule, and so there are many studies. Have there been studies of changes to this spectrum when it has been matched or attempted to be changed through specific wavelengths or frequencies? So that's Anton Broadhurst.
Oh. Hello.
Hi, Anton. Okay. Okay.
So after being a part of this meeting,
Did it freeze?
Yeah, Anton, if you can hear us, you have frozen up. Go ahead, Ines, why don't you maybe, if you have a sense of the question, go ahead and speak to it, and then if he comes back on, we can,
Wondering, okay, so yeah, it's, hi, Anton, you were freeze.
Okay.
Okay. So you were saying?
So my understanding is that each wavelength has a particular energy associated with it, and that if that particular amount of energy is just right for making a jump, it can be absorbed. So wavelength of light can be absorbed by matter if the energy that's associated with it is the particular amount of energy they match, and they can jump from anti-orbital to the orbital field of electrons.
Yeah.
And I noticed that you mentioned earlier that you were studying light matter interactions, and I just wondered if you could just expand on that slightly.
Oh, okay. Okay. So yeah. So you see each element. So you see the simplest example is the proton we have as an atom. So because you have just one proton, I mean the hydrogen atom, because you have just one proton and one electron. And these electrons got different, so they're in the frame of the holographic model, it's not, the electron is more like a distribution of potential energy, right? So you have different like waveforms, resonant waveforms. So the light that's coming in must be resonant, must have this, let's see, a package of energy which coincides with the energy of the orbital, let's say. Or the energy of the change of configuration of this waveform, let's say it that way. Okay. Because we don't see in the holographic model, we don't see electrons going like orbitals.
This is why I wanted to ask the question, because as going through module 7, my understanding of the proton changed. You basically describe the history of the study of the proton, of how science had described it, and then you redescribe it in terms of with the holographic. So
Yeah.
I saw in there that there was a digital spectrum, digital light spectrum, which was unique.
Yes.
And I was just curious if there's been any studies or if you know of any experiments that have been done that have maybe helped carry. So for instance, with the tomato, you're able to interact with the molecules and create a propagating geometrical structure that lasts in the tomatoes through interacting with it from the crystal. Have there been any experiments done with light interactions of a similar manner of holding some type of propagating coherency through time?
Yeah. Yes, of course there has been. The problem is that they're not stable. When you create, systems are stable at their fundamental level. I mean, they have this signature, this energetic signature, which is what you measure through the spectrum, which is at their. So what happens is, like in the example of the absorption spectrum, you have this atom, then you light it with this energy, and then it gets, if it's resonant, in resonant condition, it's that what you just said, it will absorb it, and then, but it won't skip it. It would create some changes in configuration and all of that, but ideally he will try to get rid of that energy because he wants to go back into his fundamental state, which is the original state. Okay, so as long as I'm shining on it, it will be perturbed. We call that perturbation, excitation, all of that. But this excitation will, as long as I'm perturbing the system, it will keep having this perturbation. But once I get out the excitation source out of the picture, then it will relax through many processes. It could even do fluorescence. If it's a chromophore, if it's like some kind of very complex molecule, or it will just heat and just relax it as heat.
Right.
As energy.
Right.
So it's very unstable. Once you have this, so you can charge a molecule and try to keep it in this different configuration for a certain amount of time, but it's not stable. So that's
okay.
The issue with that, yeah. Yeah, because they
so then if light is all right, so if everything's spinning, right, light is a spin motion of radiation, right, going out. It's out, one of the outward motions. Vibration or waves, particle waves, or sound waves. All right, so I've recently just learned how electromagnetic lights in that description, that how the one is vertical and the other one is horizontal. So is there, speaking of harmonic relationships in the field, there's scales that go up, like the Planck to the universe, right? And then there's got to be specific scales or harmonics that go sideways to individualize what's going on within those up and down scales, right? So then there's sideways scales of harmonics. Let's say you were to utilize specific, let's say well-known ones like the chakras for the heart, which would be healing green. That's more of a greenish. Maybe you were trying to match some type of light green wave with a harmonic resonance of love or whatever, like whatever that matches out to. Hold that together for maybe a more stable interaction than just random guesses, because you have to be so specific when interacting with these different fields. Those types of experiments could go on forever, but I have, it's possible. I feel like it's worth looking into. And I know that you guys are able to interact. I can see from with the tomatoes, my own eyes, that you guys are able to interact with molecules over a period of time, right? So, I'm just looking to.
I guess I know what you mean. So you're trying to create, okay, so what the art crystal was doing with the structured water was enhancing the coupling with the vacuum fluctuations, with the vacuum field. So that's what's giving the tomato the properties they have, these properties. So so let's say atoms are stable, like unless they're radioactive or whatever, but atoms
Right.
in zone, they're very stable. They can protons are eternal. They won't decay. So these atoms and most of the molecules are stable, as stable as they can be, unless you have them reacting with other things because of some conditions. Reactions that are spontaneous, their reactions that are not, that require energy to happen. So biological beings, so at the level of this basic chemistry, there seems to be no problem at all. I mean, their atoms are doing their thing, their the chemistry is blah, blah, blah. Then at the biological level, then that's when the coherence starts. There's coherence, which is most of it, but there's some parts that start to decohere. They start to decohere.
Yeah.
For many reasons that we want to understand and solve through the holographic solution, because that's one of their the applications is on health and length and life extension, and tomatoes being more lasting longer and being more healthy, all that. Okay, but that is a different issue. We're talking about how to couple biological systems, which are already coupled because we all emerge from the vacuum field,
Right.
but how to enhance the coupling and how to have this coupling being stronger and being more coherent. So when you have this coupling more coherent and more enhanced, then let's say you're more connected to the grid, to the energy grid, and you're having more coherence and more health, and that's basically the idea. Because the source of energy is the field, is this perpetual rotating field, which is a gradient of rotations and this gradient is given the scales. It's determining the specific scales where you have. So that's so basically let's say that light matter interaction, the field emission, the light emission is a consequence of that, of the rearrangement that you will have when there's this better coupling or whatever, will change the let's say the resonance, the resonance structure. So then that would have as a consequence that you have a field which is coming in and out from that at a different frequency.
I understand.
So you cannot, you see, you cannot, I mean, let's say,
Influencing it from the outside versus influencing it from the inside, right?
Yeah. Yeah, you could do it both ways because it's a feedback, feed forward. But you could do it through the singularity, which is going from the inside, because at the center there's a singularity, or you could do it from the outside, which is the network, the wormhole network, which is on the surface of the proton, for instance.
Right.
So there are two ways of interacting, through the surface and through singularity, which would be you could see it like a sort of more inside out experience. That's why you used to say you have to go inside and go into your singularity and tap inside your own field, and because if you go through singularity, it will be a different mechanism and probably fastest, I guess. I don't know. I don't know.
Okay. Yeah. No, I just wanted to really. I thank you for taking the time and answering my question. I kind of rushed getting it out there because I know that you have to get your question out there right away. So I just fired it off, you know, and so I appreciate you guys coming up to talk to me. I've been working myself through the module 7, and it is very thorough, and I really appreciate all the work you guys put into it.
Thank you. Thanks for your great question and for being here with us.
Very interesting.
Absolutely.
Very
Take
interesting.
good care.
All right, take care, guys.
Bye.
I just want to clarify the point that Anton made about the questions, and Adam sort of alluded to about getting your questions in first kind of makes it so we'll get to them sooner. That's not really the case. There is a voting system. So when questions get voted up by everybody attending, we tend to look at those that are kind of more popular that people want to hear. At the same time, we go through and look at all the questions. And so please don't think that you have to rush your question or get it in first or anything like that. We're not favoring the questions we address by those kinds of measures, you know, so I just want to be really clear about that.
And also, Marshall, it's good to mention that if you guys want to ask these direct questions, we're taking them from a Zoom call, and the Zoom people are contributing members. And I put a link in the chat on YouTube. Everybody on Zoom is already a contributing member, but for only $5 a month, you can contribute to the foundation. And it actually gives you access to the first section of every one of our online courses. And that's a lot of information right there. You can also ask live questions of Nassim Haramein on the Live with Nassim calls, which is the first Wednesday of every month. And we do breakout groups where members of our community around the world come on Zoom, and we break out into small groups and people discuss whatever topics they want every month, twice a month, actually. And you get access to a private Facebook group and a private forum group, and a bunch of films like the Connected Universe film, feature film that Sir Patrick Stewart narrated about Nassim's work, and the Black Hole film and the Crossing the Event Horizon 4 DVD set. There's a whole bunch of stuff. And as you guys know, it's like crowdsourcing. We need a lot of people from all around the world to contribute a little bit each, and then we can continue to get this really crucial information about the universe out to the world at a time where we need to change faster than we've ever changed. And so better change in resonance with what the universe is doing.
Yeah, some long time.
Yeah, thank you guys for your support.
Because if we don't, we're going to blink out of existence any moment now. Great. Yeah, thanks so much, Jamie, for saying all that. We really appreciate everybody's participation in our membership, and keeps us going, keeps the lights on, keeps the information flowing, feedback feed forward at a very kind of base human level here on this time at this time in our experience. But it's so appreciated. Thanks, Ines. Thanks, Jamie, Adam Apollo today.
Thanks for hosting Marshall Efforts. Everybody check out Marshall Efforts' book, Cosmometry. Go check it out. It's awesome.
Thanks, Jamie. That's right. Check it out, cosmometry.com. You can find out there. All right. Be well, everybody. In the meantime, we'll see you next month, and take good care out there in our wild and crazy world. Bye, everybody.
Bye, everyone. Bye.
All right, folks.